So hello everybody, we shall now be discussing some important practice questions for the NEET crash course. So first I will be dealing with the chapter Plant Growth and Development. Now the first question says match the following. So they have given the list of hormone on the left side and on the right side they have given the functions. So auxin. Now auxin is a plant growth hormone that helps in differentiation of xylem. So auxin is the D option in the second list. Now gibberellin. Now gibberellin is mostly involved in production of early seeds. Now this is mostly seen in conifers. So conifers can attain maturity at a quicker time and they can produce more number of seeds. So gibberellin is involved in early seed production. Ethylene. Now ethylene helps the flooded rice plant in order to show petiole elongation as well as the internode elongation. So it is C. And lastly we have cytokinin, and it is important for you to note that cytokinin is the one that is involved in decreasing the senescence of leaves, reducing the senescence of leaves, and as a result the fourth one would be the second option. Okay, so based on what I have matched over here, the correct answer would be the third option according to the list. Now the second question is again a match the following question. Now in the second question what you can see is again they have given the name of hormones in the first list and the chemical names of this particular hormone on the second list. So auxins, as you all are aware, the naturally occurring auxin is indole acetic acid, correct? Then gibberellic acid or gibberellin is Ga3. We have seen that it is named as Ga. Ga stands for gibberellic acid. And then we have seen cytokinin. Now cytokinin, a naturally obtained cytokinin, is zeatin from the corn kernel and coconut milk. So it is the option T in list 2. And dormin is usually one of the substances that was extracted, that was isolated from plants, and they exhibited properties similar to growth inhibiting properties similar to abscisic acid. So this is the correct list, correct match the following. So according to the answer, it is the third option in the list. Seed dormancy in tomato seeds is due to, now it is seen that tomato seeds, now you all buy tomato from the market, but the seeds don't germinate even though there's a lot of moisture in tomato, because tomato is a fruit. So why doesn't the seed germinate in tomato? The seed doesn't germinate in tomato because of presence of a dormancy inducing factor. The dormancy inducing factor that is present in the tomato pulp is called the ferulic acid. So the correct answer is ferulic acid. Okay. Then we have a method to break the seed dormancy by subjecting it to repeated low and high temperatures. Such a method which is used to break the seed dormancy is called stratification. Okay. The next question says exponential phase in the growth. We have seen that geometric phase or geometric growth exhibits a sigmoid curve. In the sigmoid curve, the second phase is called the exponential phase. Now during the exponential phase of growth, there is both enlargement of cells and there is increase in the growth rate. So the correct answer is both A and B, which is seen during the log or the exponential phase of growth. Okay. The sixth question says find the incorrect statement. The first statement says decapitation. Decapitation means, please remember, removing the stem apex, removing the shoot apical meristem, results in the growth of axillary buds. Very true, because it is always the apical bud which dominates. It's called apical domination. So the first statement is true. Turgidity of the cell helps in extension of growth. Yes, because turgidity is what brings about elongation of cells, and that makes the cells become much more bigger in size, and therefore it helps in elongation of root, for example. The third one says the cells would lose their protoplasm when tracheary elements are formed. Now you all know that tracheary elements like xylem vessels do not have protoplast inside because they have undergone differentiation. So the third option is also correct. Initial growth rate in a sigmoid curve is called log phase. Log phase is not the initial growth rate. The initial growth phase is called the lag phase. So it is only the last statement. So the correct answer is only D is incorrect in this particular question. The seventh question says auxins promote apical dominance by suppressing the activity of lateral buds. Very correct, because auxins are synthesized in the shoot apex and they dominate the lateral buds. So they suppress the activity of the lateral buds. That's why the lateral buds don't form branches just below the apical bud, isn't it? Periodic decapitation means removal of the shoot tip, that is done in horticulture, makes the plant bushy. Why does it make the plant bushy? Because it allows the lateral buds to grow. When you cut away or cut off the apical meristem, then you are allowing the axillary meristem to grow, and as a result the plant stops growing vertically, it starts growing horizontally to become a bush and it is used in growing hedges in horticulture, isn't it? Yes. So it is both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct. The eighth question says the leaves of Mimosa pudica, which is called the touch me not plant, it is touch sensitive plant. You all must have, whenever you touch the leaf of this plant, the leaves curl up into a bundle, and that is because there are changes associated with the turgor pressure that is seen in the base of the leaf, or what is referred to as the leaf base or the hypopodium. Okay, that is where you can see the changes happening in the turgor pressure, and that causes the leaves to curl or to shrink. Plants growing under prolonged water stress. Now they have lot of water stress, as in they have very little water to make do with. So as a result, what is the best option that a plant would do? The plant would shed off its older leaves, because the older leaves have attained maximum growth rate. They have become broader in size. They are consuming more water. So if you shed off the older leaves, you can maintain the younger leaves in the plant body. So during this time, the plant makes an adjustment by shedding off its older leaves. Okay. The seasonal activity of cambium. Now, what is cambium? All of you are aware that cambium is nothing but meristematic tissue, and this meristematic tissue is involved in secondary growth. So it is not something that is active during the early stages of the life of a plant. It is active when the plant is transforming to becoming a tree, to becoming a woody plant, isn't it? So cambium is meristematic tissue, and mostly meristematic tissue is under the influence of the volatile plant growth regulator, which is actually having a dual role. We had discussed in the synopsis that ethylene has a dual role. So this seasonal activity is under the direct influence of ethylene, which can function under certain circumstances as a growth inhibitor and under certain circumstances as a growth promoter. Okay. Find the odd one out with respect to seed dormancy. Now, among all the given options, the dormancy is most evidently found in Trigonella Phenum Greecum, and it is simply referred to as the fenugreek. You all know fenugreek, you use regularly in your kitchen. It is a seed variety which you can store in containers, in airtight containers, and for a very long time the seeds do not germinate. That's why among all the given ones, Trigonella is the odd one out, because that exhibits the most prominent, you can say it exhibits the most evident form of seed dormancy. The pigment concerned with various photomorphogenetic movement. Now they have identified that plants have certain pigments in them which are responsible for movements of the plant, which are also responsible for, say, how the plants detect the changes in the light and dark duration. And this plant pigment has been given a name. It has been called as phytochrome. Now what this phytochrome does is it has a positive effect on membrane permeability, because it has to move from one plant organ to another plant organ, and once it reaches a target site, it has to be picked up by the target cells. So obviously it should make sure that the membrane permeability is more, so that it can easily diffuse from one cell to another cell, and it can pass to all the parts of the plant body. Okay. So phytochrome is the pigment that is concerned with plant morphogenesis, movements associated with plants. Like for example, we have seen movements like trophic movements, isn't it? And most importantly, this phytochrome, as I told you, is involved in detecting the daylight and the darkness, which has a direct influence on the differentiation of the floral primordium and flowering in the plant. Okay. If an etiolated stem could be first saturated by spraying auxin. Now auxin is missing in this question. If you're spraying auxin onto an etiolated stem means you have exposed the stem to complete darkness for a very long time, and it has lost all its chlorophyll. It has become pale or white in appearance. It has not been able to photosynthesis because you have kept it in complete darkness. So if you if you spray such a stem with auxin, and then if you expose it to a streak of light from one side, so you know that if you have a stem, you have the stem apex. The stem apex is what you are treating it with auxin over here. And now when you treat it with auxin, and when you provide it with unilateral illumination, light is falling only on this side, not on the other side, then obviously this particular stem, that stem tip, which because has auxins in it now, will start bending towards the light, isn't it? So it exhibits a phototropic movement. So there is bending towards the light. That is one of the most important properties of auxins. Auxins are inactivated by light. So what happens is, when you are illuminating this side, all the auxins will get concentrated on the side, on the shaded side, that is where there is no light, and there they cause cell elongation, and as a result the stem tip will start bending towards the source of light. The plant hormone which is basic in nature is cytokinin. This is a very important thing. The acidic plant hormone is gibberellin or gibberellic acid. However, the plant hormone which is basic, please remember, is cytokinin. So that completes the discussion of plant growth and development. Now let us move on to the chapter chemical coordination and integration. We shall go through questions from this chapter as well. If the pituitary gland of an adult rat is surgically removed, you are removing the pituitary gland. They are asking which of the endocrine gland is less affected. Now which among the following, you have to think which among the following glands is not directly under the influence of pituitary gland. You will get the answer, because adrenal medulla is not under the control of either posterior pituitary or anterior pituitary. So adrenal medullary function will be less affected if you remove the pituitary gland surgically. Please remember, the pituitary gland produces a hormone called adrenocorticotropic hormone, which stimulates the adrenal cortex. It releases a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone, which stimulates the thyroid gland. It releases a hormone called gonadotropins. That is, there are two gonadotropins. One is FSH and LH, which activates the gonad, but it does not release any hormones which has an influence on adrenal medulla. So adrenal medulla will be less affected if you remove the pituitary gland surgically. Okay. Acromegaly. Now acromegaly, I had told you in the synopsis, it is a condition which is associated with severe disfigurement of the face. It is seen due to over secretion of growth hormone in adulthood. We had learned that it is mostly in middle-aged people when they have excessive secretion of growth hormone. Their hands and their feet and their face, the bones in these parts of their body will start growing disproportionately, and they will exhibit a disease that is referred to as acromegaly, isn't it? So the answer is over secretion of growth hormone in adulthood, to be very specific, in middle-aged people. A substance called antidiuretic hormone. Now here I would like you to recall, what is another name for antidiuretic hormone? Antidiuretic hormone is also referred to as vasopressin. Now what this antidiuretic hormone does is, that it is secreted by the pituitary gland. So it starts off, the option itself starts off with a pituitary secretion which stimulates the reabsorption of water from the glomerular filtrate. Now where does this vasopressin mostly act? The vasopressin mostly acts on the collecting duct of the nephron. You all have learned the structure of the nephron. Principally, it acts on the collecting duct, and it stimulates the collecting duct to take back water from the urine, and thus concentrating the urine. So remember, it helps in reabsorption of water. And in synopsis, we had learned why it is called antidiuretic hormone, because when the vasopressin is acting normally, the person will produce concentrated urine, not highly concentrated, the normal concentrated urine. And this condition where there is production of normal concentrated urine is very, very important to prevent what? To prevent dehydration. To prevent dehydration, because you are taking away the water from the urine back into your blood, and therefore you're conserving the precious water, you are not unnecessarily losing the water from your body. That's why it is called anti-diuretic hormone. Now suppose we had discussed that if a person has low levels of secretion of ADH, this is also important. Please remember, if a person is suffering from deficiency of anti-diuretic hormone, then the water reabsorption does not happen, so he will experience loss of water in urine. And this condition where there is excessive loss of water in urine, that is formation of dilute urine, is referred to as diuresis. Since anti-diuretic hormone prevents this from happening, it is called anti-diuretic. Otherwise, loss of excessive water in urine, frequent urination, which is diuresis, and this condition is seen. The name given to this disease is diabetes insipidus. Don't get confused with diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is due to deficiency of insulin, but here due to deficiency of ADH, a person produces lot of dilute urine, repeated or frequent urination is seen, there is loss of water in the urine, that is called diuresis, and this medical condition is called diabetes insipidus. Okay, so here the correct answer is the third option. It is a pituitary secretion which promotes reabsorption of water from the glomerular filtrate or the primary urine. Median eminence is a part of neurohypophysis. Now you all know that there is a pituitary, there is a hypothalamus above, and this hypothalamic region through a stalk. What is this stalk called? The infundibulum. It is continuing with the posterior lobe of pituitary, and then I had told you there is a tubular part to anterior pituitary and a bulged part to the anterior pituitary, isn't it? So we had discussed. Now this part of the hypothalamus, from where the infundibulum, this is the infundibulum or the stalk, isn't it? So from the part from which the infundibulum continues is referred to as the median eminence, and therefore it is directly associated among all the given options here. It is directly associated with, what is this shaded portion I'm talking about? The posterior lobe of pituitary, which is referred to as the neurohypophysis or pars nervosa. So remember that median eminence is a part of hypothalamus, from which what comes down? The stalk of the pituitary. We had labeled the stalk of the pituitary as simply as the stalk, or it can be called as infundibulum. And what is this part which is continuous with the infundibulum? This part is the posterior lobe of pituitary gland. It is called the neurohypophysis. And what is this part of the lobe? The bulged part in the front. This is pars distalis, isn't it? Pars distalis is the swollen part, and the tubular part we had learned, the tubular part is called pars tubularis, and pars distalis and pars tubularis collectively they form the anterior lobe of pituitary. This anterior lobe of pituitary is called the adenohypophysis. So the answer to this question is median eminence, which is related to neurohypophysis. Okay. At menopause, there is a urinary increase in urinary excretion of follicle stimulating hormone. Now why there is increased urinary excretion? Because when generally during menopause there is no menstrual cycle, there is no estrogen and progesterone, so the pituitary gland tends to start producing excess amounts of FSH, and as a result it shows up in the urine for a temporary period in a menopause woman. Okay. Secretion of estrogen is promoted by, now estrogen is secreted by the growing ovarian follicles, please remember. And how do the ovarian follicles secrete estrogen? Under the influence of a hormone secreted by your anterior pituitary, which is called the follicle stimulating hormone. So the answer is follicle stimulating hormone. Anterior lobe of pituitary, we already discussed the anterior lobe of pituitary is nothing but, what is the technical term for the anterior lobe of pituitary? It is called the adenohypophysis. The anterior lobe or the adenohypophysis secretes three major hormones: the follicle stimulating hormone, which is a gonadotropin, the growth hormone, and LH, which is again a gonadotropin, that is luteinizing hormone. So the correct answer is last option. Which of the following is known as vestigial hormone? Vestigial means it is produced by a structure which is highly reduced in our body. The best example, the correct answer is melanocyte stimulating hormone, because once again I will show you here, this was the hypothalamus, this was the structure that continues from the hypothalamus was the posterior pituitary, and this was the anterior pituitary. In between the posterior and anterior pituitary there is a very thin zone which has almost become a part of the anterior pituitary, and this area is referred to as pars intermedia. And since it is highly reduced and it has almost become a part of the anterior lobe, that is pars distalis and pars tubularis, we call this pars intermedia as vestigial structure, as in it is highly reduced, and therefore the hormone secreted by the vestigial structure is the melanocyte stimulating hormone. So the correct answer is third option, MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. The axolot larva. Now, axolot larva is the larva of a salamander that is called ambystoma. Sometimes the larvae, as you all know, larvae of amphibians are aquatic in nature. Sometimes the larvae of these amphibians will fail to undergo metamorphosis and they will look like a larva throughout their life. When they look like a larva throughout their life, the condition is called neoteny, and sometimes even while they look like a larva, they become sexually mature. That condition is referred to as pedogenesis. So it is seen, it is exhibiting both neoteny and pedogenesis. Please remember, the axolot larva is the larva of a salamander which fails to undergo metamorphosis, and throughout its life it retains its larval characters and it becomes sexually mature. That condition is called neoteny and pedogenesis. Daily rhythm. Daily rhythm is a 24-hour diurnal rhythm. As you all know, is the function of the pineal gland. We had discussed that the pineal gland releases a group of peptide hormones. It releases a hormone called melatonin. The melatonin released by the pineal gland takes care of our metabolism. It takes care of our pigmentation. In females, it takes care of menstrual cycle, daily rhythm, that is the diurnal rhythm, isn't it? And also our immune function. So basically, the pineal gland is responsible for the hormone. Please remember, the hormone secreted by the pineal gland is called the melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that is secreted by the pineal gland. Which of the following is not a hereditary disease? Cretinism is not a hereditary disease because cretinism is seen in children due to hypothyroidism. Suppose when the child was in the mother's womb, the mother had suffered from hypothyroidism, then the child is born with the condition, so it is seen in children, okay, in a child, that is probably a newborn child, because when the mother was pregnant she had hypothyroidism. So if they ask you hypothyroidism in children, in child, it is referred to as cretinism. Cretinism means stunted growth. There is stunted growth, abnormal skin, deaf mutism, mental retardation, and so pigmentation also is altered, that's why it's called abnormal skin. So these are the symptoms of cretinism, which is not a genetic disease, but it is due to low secretion or hypothyroidism of thyroid hormones, and in a child that is born to a mother who during pregnancy had hypothyroidism. Okay. Which of the following is a salt balancing hormone? When you think of salt, you have to think of sodium, you have to think of potassium, you have to think of calcium, you have to think of phosphorus, basically ions. Now, which of the following is involved in ionic balance in our body? It is the mineralocorticoid, because remember, the major mineralocorticoid in our body is the aldosterone. And if you all remember, aldosterone acts on the distal convoluted tubule, the DCT of your nephron, and stimulates reabsorption of sodium and excretion of potassium and calcium and phosphorus. So this aldosterone regulates the maintenance of the salt balance in the body, the ionic balance in the body, and that's why it is said to be a salt balancing hormone. Okay, I hope you all know that aldosterone or mineralocorticoid is basically a secretion of the adrenal. They are nothing but hormones of the adrenal cortex. So you should remember here that they are the hormones of adrenal cortex. Epinephrine, what is the alternate term for epinephrine? Now, epinephrine is something which is also called adrenaline. Do you remember adrenaline or epinephrine? And noradrenaline or norepinephrine are both collectively called catecholamines, and these catecholamines are a part of are hormones secreted by the deeper part of your adrenal gland, which is called adrenal medulla. So epinephrine is an emergency hormone, so obviously it is going to have an influence on the rate of your heartbeat and also the strength of the contraction of your heart muscles, because it has to help you to face an emergency situation, and that demands that every part of your body is richly supplied with blood, and that is made possible by increasing the rate of heartbeat. Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, as I told in the name itself, it is a hormone. It is a disease associated with thyroid gland. It is a kind of a disease that we call as an autoimmune disease. Why is it called an autoimmune disease? In an autoimmune disease, normally our immune system is supposed to protect our body organs, but in case of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, a person's immune system will start destroying his own thyroid gland, and that results in a condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So when your immune system, instead of protecting your body cells, when they turn against your body cells, when they start destroying your own body cells instead of protecting them, we call it as an autoimmune condition. Muscular tetany. Now, tetany is a condition where there is involuntary rapid contraction and relaxation of muscles. Now, tetany is because of one important thing you have to remember: low blood calcium level. Now, when I say that tetany is because of low blood calcium level, you have to think of a hormone which is responsible for increasing the blood calcium level, and that hormone is deficient in this case. So the answer is parathyroid hormone. The job of parathyroid hormone is to increase your blood calcium level and therefore prevent it from becoming too low. But since a person here is suffering from deficiency of parathyroid hormone, his blood calcium level will come down, and that will cause a disease, a condition called tetany. So that's why parathyroid hormone, which keeps your blood calcium level high always, it is referred to as the hypercalcemic hormone. So the reason why parathormone is called hypercalcemic hormone is its job is to increase your blood calcium level. And when you have less of parathyroid hormone, which is simply called PTH or parathormone, that time obviously your blood calcium level will come down, and that leads to a condition that is referred to as muscular tetany. I hope you remember that one of this, that is parathormone, is responsible for increasing the blood calcium. Now just for you to remember, you find out and tell me, you find out and write down the answer somewhere, which is the hormone responsible for bringing down the blood calcium level. I called parathormone as a hypercalcemic hormone because it increases your blood calcium level. Your job is to find out which is the hormone that brings down the blood calcium level. So we can call that X hormone as hypocalcemic hormone. So which is the hypocalcemic hormone, you will find out. So with this we will complete the practice questions of NEET crash course from 2 chapters: plant growth and development and chemical coordination and integration. Thank you.